So let's just start having a little bit of chat while people are still joining in, at least with those of you who are here. Is anybody completely new to mindfulness? Like just new?
Uh, can I go?
Yeah. Yes, Sach.
So, as a concept, maybe not, but to this particular workshop and it's, how it works, definitely it's new for me. But as a term, yes, it's been used pretty liberally all over. So,
I know.
and it seems we have all moved away from actual mindfulness. So everybody needs to get back to it. We as
Yeah.
an entire generation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not just a generational thing. If you go back to the Eastern, the older philosophy and the thought, you find that they have been teaching this for the last 4,000 years. So it means that it has been applicable across those 4,000 years. And at different times, people have still moved away, so to say, from what their core nature is. So it's as applicable today as it was 4,000 years ago, which is a lot to say, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
With so much changes. What about the others who are all new here? It's really nice to see new faces. Um, what about you? What made you come to this workshop? What do you hope to?
Uh, so can I
Yeah,
start?
please.
So I had studied the concept briefly in college, but
Mm-hmm.
there was never any emphasis. And then my therapist actually suggested doing this,
Mm-hmm.
just to get rid of some anxiety that's always perpetually there with all of us, I guess. Uh,
Mm.
so yeah, so that is how I got
So,
to know of you
yeah,
and the workshop.
yeah. And it's nice that you're saying, Niyati, that it's a perpetual anxiety that's been there with all of us. I mean, it's also a kind of universality to the condition. It's no longer that I am anxious.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that, because a lot of time as a therapist goes and telling people, listen, trust me, this is around, this is not you, and this is not just about you.
Right.
Yeah, I can see a message here from Yusuf saying this is the first time that you're joining this workshop, and you've gone through the guided video a little bit and you're aware of mindfulness and you've read the book. Okay, nice,
Yes,
Yusuf.
yes. So my job works demands for working with emergency, any kind of a natural or man-made different parts of India and the world. So while handling this emergency and psychosocial therapy, I believe I also thought certain kind of this
True.
kind of so I have been doing sessions. So but some I have been asked by one of your colleagues to join your this thing. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you've come with some background. That always helps. One thing about this is that, whether it's the first time you're listening to it or it's the 100th time you're listening to this, it's still meaningful. It still makes sense. It's still about, because it's still reminding us of some very fundamental, we are working with very fundamental processes and very fundamental ideas in this. So it's still always reminding us of uh, what we need to direct our work towards. So as you kind of attend this over and over, your attention and your focus becomes more refined. So you, every time you pick up something slightly different from the same workshop, from the same course, because it's a journey. I mean, we're just beginning the journey. um, and somebody says, wish it was the first time. Why is that? No, it's still always like the first time for me too. I mean, I still after so many years, I'm always hearing teachers, and it always gives me something new to take back, always gives me something new to work with. So it's just the beauty of how the space is, you know. Um, okay. Yes, somebody wanted to share something, I thought.
Yes, hi. I
Hi.
just wanted to say
Hi,
hi.
Sonali. Yes. Hi. Nice.
So
Sonali, right?
yes,
Ah.
it's Sonali. So for me, I'm doing a research master's in psychopathology, and in my research
Ah.
master's, I write a lot of proposals, and all the research I do is comparing CBT with
Mhm.
mindfulness.
Ah.
And so by now, I'm really curious what mindfulness is. And
Uh-huh.
I have I've experienced a lot of meditation with different meditation centers. And now I'm just curious, like, is mindfulness an umbrella term for everything or nothing? Is it so unstructured, or is it really structured and it has like, okay, this is like a trademark thing? Like I've no clue. And I've literally come to this workshop with
To
no
clarify that.
expectations. And I am joining now because I told myself it's online. I don't need to plan anything, schedule anything. I can just sit in my room and do it. So
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here, and these questions are very genuine, and we'll definitely answer these. I have Wendy here from Australia saying hi and saying it's her first time. Welcome, Wendy, and I'm really glad that you are here. And I hope we can together kind of come to some understanding of this concept. I want to, just starting from where you, what you asked, Sonali, is it's very interesting what's going on with mindfulness at the moment. Because even I say mindfulness, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm actually, I think I'm working with a whole lot of stuff that is involved with understanding oneself. And I'll come to where I find mindfulness a good entry point. So my study has been in the area of course, psychology. As a psychologist, I have been a psychotherapist for the past 20 years. But also, I started with a meditation workshop at some point 12 years ago. And I found something very useful there, which was that we are always caught up in this idea of fixing things. Like something is not okay. And then we go focused into what is not okay. And then we say, okay, let me see how to make this okay. Whether it's anxiety, whether it's a relational difficulty, whether it's something we are not able to achieve, whether it's a health concern, it doesn't matter. But we're like, okay, this is my issue. Let me look at this. And what just happened to me as I was going through the meditation workshop, I said that it felt like there seems to be some value in pausing, not just jumping into fixing, but waiting for a while. Because when you wait and when you pause, a new dimension kind of opens up, a new possibility of some subtle awareness opens up, which is not there until you're in your intellectual, cognitive orientation. I call, for me, that intervention is always a present moment. That pause is always in the present moment, isn't it? You cannot almost not pause if you're not in the present. It's only now that you can pause. You can't say, I will pause tomorrow, because then you're not paused yet. So you can pause only now. And the moment you pause now, something in the here and now has the capacity to shift something. Now, what that was at that time when I just started meditation, I felt like just this was important. Okay, you can pause, you can stay with your breath, and something changes. There is some different nuance. But what exactly it wasn't clear. And then I went ahead and I studied more. I studied the neuroscience behind it. I did more meditation workshops. I studied more philosophy. I studied Buddhist philosophy, from where this comes, But then also studied a little bit of Vedanta and Advaita, got exposed to sages like Ramana Maharishi. I mean, that trying to understand just kept going deeper and deeper. And now what I'm saying, mindfulness, is that while the intervention is in the present moment, mindfulness is not just limited to present moment focus. Present moment focus, yes, it's an entry point into what? Into the realm of who we really are. What is really, really going on as a process within each individual? And what is also really going on as a process across individuals? How are our processes even common as people? And even within a particular individual, based on their own conditioning, what is that process? But accessing that process is impossible unless it is in the present moment. So what I feel psychology does is it tries to understand patterns, it tries to understand past trauma, what happened in your childhood, etc. But the intervention into what is happening now is mindfulness. So for me, that's mindfulness, being here now fully. I don't think it's trademarked. I think mindfulness comes from the word sati. It's a Pali word that the Buddha talked about. So it can't get trademarked. The translation may be trademarked, but otherwise I don't know. Sati is this quality of being here. That's it. And can you establish yourself in sati? Can you establish yourself in this full awareness of being here? And what we will see is there's a lot of shaking when that happens. When you try to stay here, only then you recognize what does not let you stay here. You know, you have to stay here to recognize that you actually cannot stay here. You have to make that attempt to recognize the impediments to that attempt. So, there's a nice story, and I'm now going to get a slightly different angle. One is the angle of course, being here, but this other angle of not being aware. There is this. I recently read it. I don't think I've said this story before in any workshop, but it's a very funny story. So, it's about Mullah Nasruddin. It comes from the Sufi traditions. And one day the mullah is sitting on his donkey and running through the market in a big rush. He's very busy. So his friends stop him and they're like, hey, mullah, stop. Let's have a chat. No, I'm very busy. What are you so busy? What are you so busy running? What are you going to find? Oh, I'm trying to find my donkey. And he's sitting on that donkey. So the Eastern traditions, the Sufi traditions, they will say that you are already on your donkey. You already have what you're looking for. All these profound sayings that we like to kind of share on social media, what you seek is seeking you and all of that. Well, they're basically saying that joy, the factor of joy is already here now, in this moment. But that's not our experience, is it? Our experience is not a perpetual joyful experience. Our experience is one which is fraught with anxiety, wanting, longing, pushing something that's difficult away, dealing with something, a relational difficulty. It's not a perfect, peaceful, happy, equanimous joy that we are experiencing. But yet the traditions are saying that the joy is like your donkey under you. And you're running around. What are you running around finding? You have to do what? You have to pause and look. So what are the impediments then to this joy? What is coming in the way? If joy is already here, if hypothetically, I'm not even saying let's believe these guys, I'm saying hypothetically, let's believe these people. Okay. What is stopping it? One is actual connection with joy. How to connect with that joy is something we are not conditioned to know. We don't have that method, that toolbox. And two, there are impediments to joy. There are obstructions to this joy, right? And the obstructions come in the form of the mind, mental stories, ideas, beliefs. The obstructions are coming in the form of conditioning. And conditioning is not just conditioning from your life and my life. It's genetic conditioning, evolutional conditioning. It's coming from a long time. But there are obstructions to this joy. If we don't get mindful or aware of these obstructions, what is really impeding our joy? And is there a way to circumnavigate that? Is there a way to address that even? Then it's very difficult. Then what we are going to do is we are going to be very busy searching for joy in the wrong places. Actually confusing pleasure for joy. Because what we feel will provide us happiness is if I get this, if this person behaves well with me, or if this person shows up this kind of love to me, I will be happy. If my mother is more nurturing, I will be happy. If my child goes through this in life, I will be happy. If I get this in my job, I will be happy. Right? I like my job, but only if I had a better boss. I like this about my life, but only if that was correct. What is happening? There is life and there is an attempt to fix life. With the mindset, with the belief that once fixed, we will become joyful. Right? Once fixed. Aren't we all in one of these spaces? Aren't we all trying to fix or solve something? this itself the Buddha called dukkha. The first teaching of the Buddha was that after he got enlightened was that there is dissatisfaction. When he says dukkha, he means dissatisfaction. There's a human trait, tendency to be chronically dissatisfied no matter what they have. And evolutionarily, we see today we have a safer house. We don't have to fear wild animals anymore. We have houses, we have grills, it's thief alarm protected, doorbells, cars, lifts, conveniences, smartphones, 24/7 entertainment, Netflix and Amazon Prime and I don't know, Hotstar. You can endlessly be entertained, endlessly. You don't have to worry. The entertainment is getting produced faster than anything. Okay, all your life you can binge watch. And yet, what is this unhappiness? Why is everybody getting more anxious? What is going on? Isn't this a genuine question to ask? And is it just a social process or is it a personal process? Because ultimately the social process is nothing but developing from our personal processes, right? So is there something to inspect? Is there something to look in? Is there something here that one needs to check? Because even personally, you will recognize that in the past, all of us have achieved something we wanted. Maybe we've not achieved some things, but some things we have achieved. So that should have made us happy, permanently. We've spent hours and days thinking about that one thing, and then we've achieved it. Then it's over. Then what happened? Then what happened? Once you achieve it, what happens?
Post changes, I think. The goalpost changes, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Isn't it? And how quickly? How quickly? Within a few days, within a month, within 2, you buy a house. You pay crores in Bombay. I mean, you cannot even afford the house. You pay EMIs, you make plans, you get the house, you enjoy it. How long? Before the next thing comes around, okay, now I need this. It doesn't matter. It's a relational. Maybe a material goal is satisfied, a relational goal will come up. A relational goal is satisfied, a power goal will come up. It doesn't matter. We can play this round and round, but the goalpost is changing. So it's almost like carrying a stick with a carrot hanging on one end and you're running with that stick. That carrot is never going to come in your hand. You're always running after some carrot. Always in that space for longing. Yusuf here says, so joy should be agnostic to our expectations from external environment or society, how they expect us to behave, or we should behave, or they should behave. What does this mean, Yusuf? You have to explain this question.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, like the example that you have given of so many carrots are hanging around. So it is something that maybe the societal pressure, or you can say the social norms that the society, I think, force us to behave, or it is something in our monkey brain or monkey mind is happening always. So that is why it's more like a nomadic kind of a behavior at social, that we are forced to behave like this or change ourselves like this to be part of the society or to meet the expectations of the society. And we also expect our I would say that who are maybe our immediate guardians or spouse or children also behave as per our expectations. So something like that.
Yeah, see, the way it is not that, see, we can't, that's what we are doing. We can change the system. We are always trying to change the system. But we have to understand that we are part of that system. And change is not easy. And you will, when you practice mindfulness, you will recognize how difficult change is. Because there is so much of wiring, okay, on a neurological level, literally, within us, that is making us even believe in these ideals. That's why you see these sages, these enlightened beings, all of them who have taught these practices through poetry, through, so many things, they're radical people. They're very radical. They will never say, go out and destroy a structure there. They'll say, destroy the structure that you have built within, which is your impediment. Your impediment is not the structure outside. Don't go destroying that castle there. If you want to destroy the sense of power, destroy its power over you. Don't go killing that. Kill that which you have created in yourself. There's a beautiful, it just reminds me of a beautiful verse in Khalil Gibran's book, The Prophet. He says that it's not the despot, the monarch that you need to handle. You need to handle the throne that you have built in your own system, right? Which is putting the monarch in that place. So it's you. So everything in this whole area, in this philosophy, everything is directed inwards first. Because there's so much inside that is being projected outside. And I see that even as a therapist again and again, like people, for example, who have trust issues, actually find untrustworthy people in the world. People who have money issues never seem to have enough money. Even if they seem to have enough money objectively, they're always in debt or something is going on, because it's something that we have to deal with inside. The demon is within, it's not outside. That does not mean you don't fight for social change or whatever, but after having looked here, so you look inside. So what this is saying is not that you don't enjoy the pleasures, but you have a wise understanding of what is stopping you from being happy. Okay, if all of this is there, then what is it that is coming in the way of my joy? And then you will find that what primarily is coming in the way of my joy is that I have actually put pleasure as a placeholder for joy and made joy conditional. I have made joy conditional upon if I get this, if I get that, if this, if that. I have actually substituted a very rich, nutritious food for a very cheap sweet, something like that. Okay, so then I want to look within, and then I want to go through this process of reclaiming what is really joy. And in today's session itself, we'll do a practice and we'll experience some of that possibility of joy right now, because the joy is not conditional upon anything. It's not even conditional upon you being able to pay attention for all the 10 minutes that we practice. It's not. Right? So what we are trying to do is we are using mindfulness, which is an entry point to present, because the present is very powerful. It's the only real thing, right? Is there anything else that is real? I know you will say it's my life, my goals, my expectations, my problems, I have to solve them. I finish the session, I go somewhere. Right now, in this moment, is anything real apart from this moment?
Can I make a point here?
Please.
So I think most of us will agree that it is kind of difficult to separate out what you are saying versus what will make me happy. I mean, the external factors or influences that you're talking about, I think it is very difficult for a common man. I consider myself to be a common man out there working to make ends meet and so on and so forth.
Right.
It's very difficult for me to separate out the mindfulness bit from the external influences.
Right.
And I think that's what we all are here seeking for.
Absolutely, Sachin. And this is called Viveka. There's a term for this. Viveka is discrimination. Really, so nobody ever has said that you start disengaging with life. And there's another question here which is similar, that shouldn't some level of materialism, isn't it required to experience joy? There's a question here. And nobody ever said don't enjoy material. In fact, they have said if you go to the Himalayas with this mind, you will go to the Himalayas with this mind. The mind will still go. Everything else you leave, but you'll take this mind with you. And what will you do with this mind? If you don't know how to work with this mind, you can be in the Himalayas or you can be in the middle of the boot camp of life, so to say. But it's the mind that has to be worked with. It's not what you give up and what you take. It's how you relate to what is going on in your life. So what we are working on is not that you stop using stuff, you stop enjoying material things, you don't enjoy food, you eat tasty food and say, I don't care. That's not what is being said. but you relate to that food with wisdom that that food is tasty now, today. It is conditional upon 100 factors: your hunger, the way the person made it, how it is today. You develop attachment to that food and say, tomorrow I want that, and it doesn't taste the same. You're not as hungry tomorrow. Or you finish eating it yesterday, so that act itself doesn't make it taste as good. You know, the fifth peda is not going to be as good as the first peda. The nature of it changes. So the point is, you understand with this wisdom, if you relate, then there is no problem enjoying your pedas. Nobody is saying don't enjoy your sweet. Nobody is saying don't enjoy things in life. But see where real joy belongs, what is going to be temporary. And if you attach and make your happiness depend on that which is temporary, then you'll always be in the stressful seeking mode all your life. That's what they are saying, right? Because then it's endless. Your goalpost, as you know, you said your goalpost keeps changing and you endlessly are running. And then you're tired. And of course you will be tired. And then you become resentful and bitter, and then you say, I don't feel happy. I have only been running, I'm tired running, and I'm not happy. So of course you're not going to be happy because it's stressful to run after something. So as long as that discrimination slowly develops, and that's the work in this path, that's the work in this journey, developing discrimination, turning inwards, and identifying your own processes that create your own discomfort, your own suffering, and then step by step, working through those processes. So at least my approach is, being a psychologist, I'm lucky here because I have the philosophy and the spiritual background, but I also have the psychological background. And so working with thoughts, working with emotions, working with actions, at all level interventions are possible. And so my approach is, you use mindfulness as an entry point to what is happening now. And then you find how you can work with the thinking that is going on now, how you can work with the emotions that are happening now. Can you identify them? Can you recognize them? So you balance right understanding and right practice. Because first we need to understand. First, we even need to be convinced this makes sense. It's worth doing this in our lives. And then once we are convinced, then the journey starts. Because then it requires a lot of practice to change that inertia. Because the mind has a conditioned inertia. So essentially we are questioning, so to say, we are saying something like, oh, just be present. It's so simple, but it's not simple. Being present is not something we are conditioned to do. We are conditioned to think, fix, solve, plan. And so when we sit for even 10 minutes together, meditating, you will find that your mind goes in all directions. And it will. And that's the conditioning that we very compassionately, gently, slowly work with. We examine. So at least the longer course is oriented to the 8-week course is oriented to this examination of thought, emotion. Like every week, take one aspect and examine it in depth and see where you're at and what is it that you need to work with. So that's the process that I find very beneficial. So what I suggest is that we also, we have another comment here. The wiring of our brain is made to always work during unconscious. Yeah, absolutely. The wiring is always unconscious. And we have been taught to think about the future. Absolutely, that is conditioning. And during lockdown, this phenomena increased with many of us. Absolutely. Absolutely, Yusuf. So it is the subconscious and the unconscious that we are trying to influence. And we have a very small window of opportunity. There was a study done, and it said that, and the study, they showed that before you actually consciously knew that you were thirsty and you needed to get up and get water, there were the galvanic skin responses and other responses of your body, the autonomic responses, the unconscious responses were monitored. and people could already say that you are going to feel thirsty. You know what I mean? I mean, what I'm saying is the system already, before you consciously know there is thirst, there is already the instinct to thirst. Right? I mean, in a very simple way, try and understand this. There is something happening in your body that's creating thirst. And the brain interprets it and says you are thirsty, you need to go get water. So there is something preceding this awareness that I'm thirsty, which is unconscious. Is this clear what I'm saying? Something is preceding this awareness that I'm thirsty. Awareness comes later. Conscious awareness comes later. What is preceding this conscious awareness comes earlier, right? Now, what happens is when the subconscious stuff, you can't do much about the subconscious stuff, but when the subconscious stuff becomes conscious, that awareness comes, there's a small window of opportunity to give in to this urge or not, to notice this urge before you act on it. Now, what happens is, just like thirst, and your action is go get up, have water, even emotions have this preceding. Even anger, for example, there's already a build-up before you're consciously aware, now I'm angry and now I want to shout at someone. So there is a very small window of opportunity before you habitually react. There's a very quick instinct awareness reaction that happens, right? At all levels. Some reactions create more suffering. And so, if there is this ability in the middle, as soon as awareness arises, if there is some training, if there is a method we have to pause and watch that training, watch that awareness arising. And that's where our practice is. Before we react, we create this, we extend the space between, because tendencies we can't do anything about. Tendencies are conditioned. I want, I'm longing is conditioned. Now I'm aware I'm longing. Now what do I do about my longing? Do I believe in it? Do I give in to it? Do I have more stories around it? When I'm saying give in and stop, I'm not even saying stop it, but at least learn to know what that longing is. Is that even worthy of a belief? Do you have to invest more in that longing? Does it make sense? That space is what mindfulness provides. That space of awareness and the practice of staying with it. Staying with that awareness before you get into a reactive pattern. Is this making sense? Yeah. It's not introspection. It's actually, Shruti asks, is that introspection? It's not introspection, Shruti. It's a possibility. It's not, see, introspection can lead to more mental stories sometimes. And that's why I'm making that difference. Because introspection is, am I about this? Am I not? And introspection is not bad. But sometimes introspection is not helpful. The point is, can I just stay? Restlessness is coming. Can I stay? This is coming up. Can I stay? I'm feeling unhappy. Can I stay? I feel rejected. Can I stay? That's all. Can I stay?
Sadia, what you're trying to say is to think forward and not go back into why it's happening, as in not ask why the feelings are coming, but to think of what am I supposed to do at the present. No?
No.
Okay.
Can I simply stay? Not what can I do, not what happened and why. For some time, can I be with what I'm experiencing now? Okay. Shruti, I'm going to tell you,
Sure.
let's do a practice. Huh?
Okay.
Just now. And all of you do it with us. Just now. What is the experience of this moment? And you don't have to tell me, just experience it. What does it mean to experience this moment for whatever it is? Let's take a minute and just experience. eyes, you can keep it open. Just experience this moment. That's all. Okay, let's talk now. What happened? Shruti, especially, you tell me first.
I can't describe, but
Whatever you
can't.
think.
Okay, I would say calm. Just being a little more aware of the present,
Right.
being aware of what was happening in my mind.
Right.
You know, that's all that I kind of knew when I closed my eyes. I could just hear the chatter, the mind talking. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Did you have to think about the future or the past?
No.
No. But did you experience what happened right now?
Yes.
You experience your mind was shattering. You also experience a level of calm. You experience a few things.
Yeah.
That's it. This is the only reality right now.
Got it.
There is no other reality. Everything else, why this is happening, what can I do, is all mental creation. You know how a film is recorded, right? It's recorded in, there is no movement, right? When the film is recorded in a camera, it's only a series of stills, right? There are many, many, many stills. When they are played together, it looks like a story. But there is no story. There is just still. There is one still, next still, next still. If you watch still to still, all the drama is lost.
Got it.
If you watch the story, it's full of drama. Put on it mental chatter, which is audio, background music.
Yeah.
You have the whole drama of life. Life is like that. It's just still by still. Can we pause in those stills and experience those stills is the question. But we are caught up in the story because story is better, more seductive, also full of more suffering. It's all like that. But we are caught up in that story. But noticing the moment is like noticing a still.
Sadia,
Yes,
just to interrupt in between.
Not at all.
So you mean to say, like, if we are caught up in the story throughout the time or throughout the day, like there are certain days that are a little harsh, or like there are certain days that are fine. So you mean to say, like, the days when we are harsh, so we should be stills.
Yeah, I'm saying that every moment is a still. And therefore, every moment has the opportunity of pausing.
So the more we pause, the more we stay, and the feelings and the emotion will go out.
It won't go out. It might even become more clear to you. But the point is, the more you pause, so of course, there's much more supportive work here. But the idea is that the more you pause and the more you can stay with what is happening to you without judging it, without pushing it away, without saying, I want this or I don't want this. Because I'm just staying with this because it's there. The more your relationship with life as it is strengthens.
Okay.
Isn't it? The less you're in the drama of the story, the more you're in the reality of the story. And often, a lot of our pain comes from where? Does it come from this moment? Or does it come from fear of the future, sadness of the past? Where does the pain come from? Where does our suffering come from, mostly? Are you? Yeah.
Most of the stories that we had cooked up in our mind.
Absolutely. No? So if we learn to pause and create that viveka, that discrimination, which we were talking about, that wisdom of what is real, what is story, what is here, what is the story. The more you're able to discriminate, the more you're able to pause, the more you're able to stay with whatever is there. And the beauty is that it does not say stay with the good things. It says stay with whatever is there right now.
But Sadia, I have like one more question. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to identify, like the thoughts become the reality and actually the reality becomes the imagination. So that's the main problem, like to differentiate between the actual reality and this cooked up story that seems
Absolutely.
reality.
Absolutely. That's why it's a practice. It's not just right understanding, but it's right practice. After you're convinced, you're beginning your journey. After you have understood this correctly, you're only beginning the journey, because then the journey is to practice through all shifting the neural wiring. But look at the promise of the path. The promise is more and more joy. Something that you've been searching all your life, something for which you've been running all your life, running for all your life. That's the promise. But the promise comes with, because there's so much conditioning, you have to question the conditioning. Nobody ever said that it's easy, but it's simple. It's not easy. It's about simply repetitively doing the same thing again and again. That's what it is about. Recognizing with wisdom, naturally a tendency comes, okay, you take it back and you say, I'm going to just stay with this, I'm going to watch this tendency, I'm going to be kind to myself. Also a very gentle practice, full of kindness to oneself. It's not a practice of you have to power through this. You have to power through your day with sudden stoicness because you are unhappy, but you're not allowed to be unhappy because unhappiness is weakness. Mindfulness doesn't say that. Mindfulness says weakness hai, no problem. Unhappiness, no problem. Whatever is there, it's there. Your ability to relate to that, accept that, not make stories about that, stay with that is your power, is where your strength will come from. Right? Because see, the problem is, why do we get so triggered? You see social media, everybody is getting triggered. Everybody is calling each other names and so much heavy polarization. Why? Because we cannot tolerate that somebody else can have a different point of view. It's our inability to tolerate that, isn't it? An inability to stay with somebody else's point of view. Fundamentally, the problem is not that they have a problematic point of view. The problem is we can't bear it that they have a different, a point of view that is not something we agree with. And nobody says don't fight. But the point is, are you fighting because you can't tolerate it? Or are you fighting this out because you believe in it? These are matters of discrimination, questions that you have to sit with. Otherwise, you're just moving around in some random way with no real understanding of what's going on with you. So create understanding within you, deepen your own understanding, and then we move. That's what.
Can I just add something here?
Please, please. Yes,
there is a
please.
book that I had read. It's quite a famous book of 7 habits of highly effective people.
Yes, Stephen
And
Covey.
one of the things that the author says is that between a stimulus and a response, I have the freedom of choice.
Absolutely.
I think probably what you are saying is that the moment I exercise that choice, it helps me to remain in the present and not do things, in a spurt or something, or simply out of emotion.
Out of reactivity. Absolutely. And there's one more thing it's saying, but there is one, there is one depth added to it. It's not just a choice. Between stimulus and response, I can rest. I can accept and just be. I don't even have to, at the moment, make a choice. What is being said is it okay to be affected by the stimulus and notice what effect the stimulus has? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's even a little more nuanced, that's all. I mean, what he's saying is absolutely what I'm saying, but with a little additional nuance here. Because that nuance is that possibility is about going inward and seeing what is really happening to me right now. And that's the nuance. Yeah.
Sadia, Yusuf here.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Someone.
No, Yusuf, you go, and then Prerna, you want to ask something?
Okay, fine. So
Radhika here.
Radhika.
Okay, I like to understand, what I understand also reading from your book and from this whatever we had discussed, that it is trying to live with that particular moment, whether it's a joy, whether it's a sorrow, or any kind of a bitterness, whatever adrenaline hormones are working in our brains, pituitary, all these things varying. Now, is it something to build? Often use the word like building our own resilience and more inclusive to the thoughts. It may be my thought, other thoughts. Like taking a pause. Once you take a pause, still your monkey brains and monkey heads are working. Like you are
Right.
getting many thoughts, and
Yeah.
somehow we believe in Bollywood melodrama, so we get into that wiring also. So connecting, we try to always connect the dots.
Right. Right.
So when you take the pause, that means that what I understand, that not to take any, not to act immediately, but to deal with the present situation. But at the same time, society, not society, but our family also may expect us to do certain actions, whether the actions, because I think someone has written very nicely that pains also comes from expectations. So it is not only from expectation from my end, but also maybe
Others'
from
expectations.
others' expectations.
I
So
understand.
how to deal with, I think it's a very it's a very broad question, but those dealing, those pause, that duration, or the moment of reflection, whatever you say, not even reflection, keeping idle, whatever. So that moment is very much based on your own judgment, that whether it will be for a 1 day or 1 hour, we don't know. So those
It is.
requires a lot of
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say, don't know, yeah.
See, it requires practice, and it's not even about whether you give in to somebody's expectations or you don't. Actually, in this practice, what you end up doing doesn't matter. How you end up doing what you end up doing matters. Okay, there's a situation, you decide this battle I don't want to pick, or you decide, no, I'm going to fight this out to the end. It doesn't matter. How caught up you are with your battle matters. If you do that with so much caught upness, it'll cause a lot of suffering. You do the same thing with less caught upness, less suffering. How to be less caught up while doing an action is the practice. How to suffer less while doing whatever is required. So nothing in this practice will say, don't do this. Don't think this. This thought is coming. Can you be a witness to that thought without getting caught up in the... So, the analogy given is a stream is flowing. A stream is flowing. If you're in the stream, then you're going to be hit by all the logs, rocks. You're subject to all the turns in the stream. But if you're out of the stream is still flowing, but you're watching the stream. So you're not going through the suffering of the stream. Now, you watching your thoughts is like that. But you being in your thoughts is like being in the stream. You're caught up in your story. But now you're watching the story that is going on. But like I said, this is the understanding. But it requires a lot of practice to step out of the stream. To recognize I'm in the stream requires practice. To step out of the stream requires practice. And again, the repetitiveness of it is what is going to lead to the result. So again and again, we step out of the stream. Again and again, we step back and watch. Again and again, we come into the witness mind. That is the practice that we are doing. Sakshi bhava. Sakshi, watch like a witness. Thoughts will come. You cannot control your thoughts, but can you watch them? So that's the thing. Yes, somebody else had a question. So we'll take one more question and then we'll do a practice and then we'll come back.
Sadhya Radhika here.
Radhika.
Lovely to
Hi.
see you again.
Same
So
here.
this is the second time I've done this program earlier and it's been really transformational. I just wanted to share my experience and, really key takeaways from the program that I had. So exactly what you said, to understand that initially before the course, I think before the whole understanding of mindfulness, I was my thoughts. I was my anxiety, I was my fears. But through the program, what I really understood is that there are the fears, anxieties, and there is me. The two are separate. So how that's helped is that it's not that anxiety doesn't come now, it comes, but I'm watching it, and there's just a space between both those things. And, if I was anxious for 10 days earlier, it's become 2 days now. Because of that space,
Wonderful.
you're allowing yourself to be that. That's one. Second thing, which I hearing a lot of people say also is that, like others' reactions and dreams, aspirations, all of that. Once you get this differential knowledge, you rise above all that. And I mean, everything else is inconsequential, right? You're really staying centered with yourself. And that's what mindfulness is about. And what I wanted to share was, I think largely these two things. I'm forgetting what was the other one. Yeah.
Thanks, Radhika. It's really nice to know that I am not, my anxiety is frankly a life-changing learning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not
So
my
what I
thoughts and
wanted,
not
yeah.
my that is big.
So earlier, what used to happen is that, if you're anxious, you're like, why are you anxious? Why are you unhappy? Why are you upset? We don't realize that why is so draining for us, both physically and emotionally. So once you remove the why out of the equation and just say that, okay, I am anxious now. How does anxiety feel in my body? How does it feel in my mind? And then suddenly there is space, around it, and suddenly it's not that bad anymore. So I feel like
Absolutely.
that has been the biggest takeaway for me through the entire program.
Thanks, Radhika. Thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful sharing, because it helps to kind of cement what I have been trying to say. So thanks for sharing that. Okay. So let's get into knowing our donkey, which is knowing joy right now. And what we are going to do is, we are going to do something very simple. We are not even going to do a very strong, strict meditation practice. We're just going to try and become aware of what's happening now. And see if we can feel that sense of okayness, okayness for whatever is there right now in our experience. Let's see if we can come to that. Okay, so I will invite you to close your eyes just so that you are less distracted by the screen and by things around. And I will play the sound of the bell to make it feel very happening. But the bell is not that important, but I will play it just to get us into us hearing the bell, you kind of settle down mode. So ground your feet. And just hear the bell for some time. I'll play it twice or thrice. In this moment, just try and allow whatever is happening to happen. Try not to want a particular state of mind or push away a particular state of mind. Just notice. See that your feet are grounded, flat on the ground. Your back is relaxed but straight. Your face is soft, open. Deliberately relax your shoulders. Let your belly be relaxed. This moment in your life just now is just what it is. There are sounds in this moment. Your body is feeling a certain way. Your breath is moving in its own rhythm, sometimes long, sometimes short. Try to change nothing. Don't reject any part of the experience, even if it's unpleasant. If there's pain somewhere, just let it be. Don't attach to any part of the experience. Simply notice. If some thought comes up, simply know thinking is happening. It's not good or bad, it just is. If you need an anchor, just notice sounds or just notice the rhythm of your breathing. But the important thing is that there is nothing to fix or plan or change right now. You're just relaxed and aware. Watching your experience in a very relaxed way. Notice the tendency to move into thinking, planning, fixing, making sense of the practice. Notice how we want to move away from this moment. And the practice is simply to come back, simply to reclaim the spaciousness available right now. There's nothing to do, nothing to change, nothing to fix. When the thoughts or the tendencies come up for fixing something, planning something, smile at them and just let them go. And you'll notice that getting into your thought arises. A tendency comes up. You want to grasp onto something. And then consciously, in an aware way, you release it. And you come back to the present. And you come back to the space when nothing is needed. If any restlessness comes up, that's also allowed. There's space for everything. Whatever is there is just there. And now we'll come to the end of the practice with the sound of the bell. Just hear the sound of the bell for a while. Okay. How did that go? Any sharing?
In moments of calm and then wavering here and there.
Right.
Again, when you said let's come back to the moment, you sort of try to keep coming back to the moment, but thoughts keep sort of ringing in your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Ashish, you see that how the calm is there, the possibility is there,
Yeah.
but the tendency is to move away.
Yeah.
But the calm is going nowhere. The tendency has to be rewired.
Hmm.
You know what we were saying, the donkey is under the mullah all the time, but the mind is such that it is searching for it in other ways. It's conditioned.
Yeah.
So we see this tendency and we see the calm that is there. And how in moments we are able to see it, in moments the mind's tendency is such that it takes it away. So if we can work with this tendency, more and more we will be able to access this ever-present calm. That's the whole idea. That's our practice. What about the others?
So can I go? Sorry.
Yeah, please, please.
So I had also moments of calm and moments of, but more I thought I was like, okay, I have to plan this now, I have to do this tomorrow. My timetable for tomorrow is coming up, and then I would keep putting myself back. So that, but it was actually nice to know that I could sit for 15 minutes like this, and it was quite easy actually. I was surprised. Maybe this is the year for my spiritual journey.
Sure. And that's what we are seeing. See, the mind says, okay, you need to be productive and plan for tomorrow. It doesn't even say it so actively. It just says, okay, this seems to be more important. Let's go there. And then as you go through this journey, you will question why that planning is so important. It gives me a sense of control, even though actually what I'm asking you to do is don't worry about anything. Just chill. Just relax. It's difficult to chill and relax. Fundamentally, that's happening, right? What are we doing? In a relaxed way, sit and stay aware of what is happening. There's nothing to do, nothing to plan, nothing to fix. My mind won't listen. No. I can't chill like this. Now that I have these 10 minutes, let me go and try and fix and figure some stuff out. Why? So that I can be more in control, happier tomorrow. But you're happy now. Why won't you sit with this happiness now? It's already there. Oh, no. This is not how it works. So this is the conditioning or the wiring. It's not that joy is not available. It's all the time available. But it's the conditioning and the wiring that has to be repatterned, reworked through right understanding and right practice.
Can I go?
Yeah, please, Sach.
So I surprised myself here. So I didn't think this would happen, but after the initial minute or so, there were these large sections of time where I actually blanked out completely. I mean, I just couldn't hear anything other than your voice, which came for instructions. There was nothing else. And then towards the end, when it was almost about 12, 13 minutes into the practice, that's when I heard background noise. But even those are minimal at this point in time. So yeah, I surprised myself here, and actually there was nothing in my mind.
And how was that? How was the experience of nothing?
So it felt good. I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed right now, and it was something akin to sleep, but it wasn't sleep because I could still actually hear your voice. So
Yeah.
I'm sure I wasn't asleep.
Yeah. Okay. And it's also natural if you do fall asleep. I mean, that's the other thing. You either get too activated because you have space, or the brain thinks, okay, there's nothing to think, means maybe it's time to sleep. So let's go there. So it goes both sides, which is also fine. I mean, it is what it is.
So it was somewhere in between.
In between. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, Yusuf here.
Yusuf, yes.
After 10 minutes, I think I got a little bit shifted. This is the problem I have from the beginning, that I cannot go beyond 10 minutes. And sometimes I think that we have been wired with the chilling concept, either with a remote or glass of drink or something.
Absolutely.
We always need some props or anchor. So here there is no
Absolutely.
prop or anchor beside your sound or breathing or anything. So I think
that's not exactly as good as a drink. So,
so without props, sometimes it is difficult. Yeah.
Of course it is. And that's what we want to see. See, that is what we want to see when it starts to get difficult. Hanging out with ourselves with nothing to do. No compulsions. Nothing to achieve is difficult. What is the scope for joy? Just being who we are is difficult. Being with ourselves is difficult. And then in our relationships, we want others to be with us. How they will be with us? We can't be with ourselves. So what is going on? I mean, the thing is, on one level, we have never questioned. On another level, and it's not very deep. In 1 hour, one session, look at the questions we are addressing. It's not very deep. It's very obvious. In fact, when I started these practices, I felt like really for 30 years, 28 years, we never questioned this stuff. We never questioned how we are going through life. It was amusing how the whole conditioning is such that there is no space. We go through education, we go through college, university, never questioned really how the mind thinks. We know brain, we know neuroscience, we know motivation, we know problem solving, decision making. We studied everything in psychology, but never really questioned how the mind works, how the experiential mind manifests itself. It's a surprise. And we have very few tools to work with them, very few tools. So we have to learn. In fact, we have to unlearn. We have to unlearn a lot of layers that have come over the calm that is already there, the peace and the joy that is already there. And children have it. But slowly, as they develop personalities, who likes me, who doesn't, and start to get conditioned, the layers develop through this lifetime also, this one life also. And also there is the genetic conditioning going on, from generation to generation, evolutionary conditioning going on. So there's a lot of conditioning in the system that has to be seen, accepted, not pushed away, but wisely worked with. And it's a journey, it's a slow practice. You do it step by step, that's all. So this is just the idea of the practice. Any questions and doubts that you have, and then I can tell you a little bit about what we are going to do in 8 weeks, what the course is about. But before that, if you have any other questions, we can address it.
No, I only had questions about that, what you're going to address later. So I'll wait for that. I want to know what timings about, with the course. What are the timings going to be?
You ask, I'll tell you. Just ask what is the question.
So what are the timings going to be and which day is it going to be? Because that's very important for us to, for me to plan. So.
Right. We've kept 2 days in the week. You can attend, there'll be a Sunday batch and a Friday batch, basically. That's how we've been doing it so far. So we have a Sunday morning batch, which is about 10 to 12. Is it 10 to 12, Salil, or 10:30 to 12:30? Something like that. One of those
Okay.
2 timings. One of those 2 timings. You'll get all the details. And then there's a Friday evening batch, which is about 7 to 9 or 7:30 to 9:30, something like that. The idea is that there are some people who cannot attend a morning time zone if they don't belong to this time zone, and so will prefer the evening times. So a batch has been kept so that the evening people, they can attend the evening times. And some days, if you miss a Sunday, you can always attend the Friday after. So the Sunday batch will be the leading batch, and the Friday batch will be the following batch. So if whatever happens on this Sunday will also happen on this Friday, of course, with a different group of people. So staying in one group will give you familiarity with people, processes, all of that. But sometimes you might have to shift because you're not able to attend on a Sunday. Now, the course is also divided into two big chunks now. One is this live webinar format, which we will have weekly for 9 weeks, which means for 8 weeks, we'll start with a webinar and end with a webinar. So you have 8 full weeks in the middle. In these 8 weeks, you will also get videos on concepts that I have pre-recorded. So there'll be no teaching in this webinar. There'll be more addressing challenges and questions. The teaching will come through the pre-recorded videos, and I'll give you some support content. There'll be guided audios. So what we will use these 2 hours that we have is for reiterating some content from what you have learned, like some important factors, addressing questions and challenges around it, practicing more. Practicing for like say 20-25 minutes together, half an hour even, so that we have longer practice spaces. And the teachings can happen in the week as you watch the videos. Now, every week you'll have about 6 to 8 videos, each not more than 10 minutes. So it's not like there's a lot of time that it will take. Maybe 10 minutes a day to watch some content, maybe another 10 minutes or 15 to practice, but that's it. So it's an immersive course that's going from across 8 weeks, from one day to one day, and all days there is something to do. And if you miss some practice days or something, that's okay, of course. But the idea is for you to have an immersive experience throughout 8 weeks.
Arya, is this the same course that Shiny underwent with you?
Yeah, it's the same course. It's just now that we have made it online, we have divided into pre-recorded videos, because what we used to do is we used to have a 2.5-hour session, and we used to give both the concepts and practices were fitted into that 2.5 hours.
But was it bi-weekly then?
It was, no, it was 2 concurrent batches. It's not bi-weekly. You have to take only one batch.
Okay.
You either come for Sundays or come for Fridays. You don't have to come for both.
All right.
So it's weekly once. It's just that it's concurrently, even then it was concurrently happening in 2 batches so that people could choose the time zones that are convenient for them.
Sadia, I have a question, and I'm trying to understand also something. So I did this September batch of 3 weeks thing that we did, building resilience and
yeah.
You know, so I practiced, but you know, after a certain point, those audio sessions, when they kind of got erased from the group. So what happened was the first 1.5 months, I thought there was a lot of, I could learn a lot. I could bring in a change into my thinking pattern and all. But after that, just the long breath meditation, I started finding it very repetitive, and I thought that the impact of the practice started going down for me, and I went back to my old patterns. So this, I don't know if it is a thing, is seeking newness, Jyotana, that you're doing the same practice, of long breath meditation and all you're doing. So I felt that I went back to maybe not almost where I was before September, but going back to the same old self.
Right.
So to practice more, you know, how to address that, you know, getting bored with the practice, though you say that you cannot judge the practice, and I understand all of that, but still that thing comes up.
No, it will come up. So you have to notice boredom then. See, what we didn't do in the emotional resilience is we didn't work on how to work with emotions, thoughts, because that was a different course. It was more on certain factors. Now we are going to work on how to sit with emotions. For example, boredom is coming up. What you need to do is let go of the practice and sit with boredom. What is the experience of this boredom? Because what is boredom? It's nothing but a body sensations which makes you react in a way that I want to leave this practice. So boredom becomes the opportunity for practice. It's not that you have to practice despite boredom. You have to make boredom your practice. Does that make sense, Nilima?
I didn't understand it actually.
It's difficult because what we will be doing in the 8-week course is also that we spend a lot of time working with emotions.
Okay.
How to work with emotions. So boredom is an emotion. It's a feeling.
Yes.
It's a feeling that the mind says, when I don't have stimulation, I don't like it. I need stimulation. That's boredom.
Yeah.
It's a demand for stimulation. And habitually, our reaction to the demand is, let's feed it stimulation. So if practice is boring, let's leave. If practice is boring, let's go watch TV. If this is boring, let's do that. And the more you feed this demand, the more demand increases because it gets wired into the mind that way, into the brain that way.
Correct.
So what you have to do is you have to say, okay, I'm bored. Let me see what it means to stay bored for some time. Why is boredom such a bad thing? Boredom need not be such a bad thing and does not have to be removed immediately. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Boredom can become a practice. How? Yeah, it needs some practice. It needs some deeper understanding on how to make boredom a practice. But the beauty of this practice is anything can become a practice. Whatever you're feeling can become your practice. Because what you're feeling and what is impeding your ability to sit with yourself is what needs to be worked with, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sadia,
Yeah.
I actually want to know what will the content of this course, matlab what practices we are going to do with this course.
We are going to do breath meditation, metta practice, body scan practice. We'll be doing certain practices, but more than practices, I think you should look at it like a way to work with your issues, whatever they may be. Your personal defenses, your emotions, your relational spaces, because whatever we are doing, your stuff will start to come up.
Okay.
If you have to sit with yourself, whatever stops you from sitting with yourself will come up. For somebody it's restlessness, for somebody it's boredom, for somebody it's too much thinking, for somebody it's planning, for somebody it's sadness. So whatever that personal stuff is, there'll be work with mindful, like awareness of thoughts, how to work with thoughts, practices of working with emotions. Each week will go deeper.
Okay.
And each week will put a spotlight on one aspect. Like this week will be dedicated to thoughts. The next week will be dedicated to, let's say, emotions. The third week will be dedicated to reactivity. So each week will have, the first 2 weeks will be basic, and then each week will have a dedicated orientation. And in that orientation, you will learn how to work with the stuff that's coming up for you.
Okay.
And in our live webinars, we can always have discussions of the challenges that you're going through, and then we can see how we can apply the practice we have learned to the particular challenge. That's how it is usually with all the courses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Vedika here.
Hi, Vedika.
So, Rajiv Thanawala had done this course with you, and he recommended this to Dad and I. He was really impacted, and I just wanted to know if you're planning to do this in person, because in smaller groups and not online. Like, although the COVID situation is there, but we were more keen on doing it in person rather than online. So
no, I understand, but it will now, for now, it will only happen online, Vedika, because of the COVID situation. Also because of the limitation of the space, no, in the sense you have to all come to Malad on a Sunday morning. It's sometimes difficult for everybody to do that and end up there. So lesser number of people can really avail. So the chances are that this course will happen more or less online, mostly. And there'll be retreats when the COVID situation improves. We'll be doing 2-day, 3-day retreats offline, in person. So the courses will now be more online than offline, is how it's looking going forward. Because for people to come 8 times, 10 times from Malad itself is a pain, even if they are in Mumbai. It's a pain.
Yeah, true. So the structure I understand is that there'll be videos, pre-recorded videos that we'll have to see during the week, and they'll be short ones. So that will be the understanding of the concept.
Right.
And post that, we'll be practicing on the Sunday.
You'll also be practicing by yourself every day.
Okay.
There'll be audio meditations also given to you to practice regularly.
Okay.
Plus on Sunday, we'll practice as a group and we'll address any difficulties, challenges, stuff that's coming up for individuals. And you may want to share, you may not want to share. You may also want to write a question anonymously and send it to me before the workshop saying, this is my issue, I don't want to share it with everybody, but I can read out the question without your names and answer the questions. So all that is possible. You don't have to share something online that you don't want to. But so those possibilities, of course, we will open up, where you can write privately your questions before the webinar.
So who is conducting this? You will be conducting?
I will be conducting it, yes.
Okay.
And the flexibility of if at all you have missed, like, let's say a Sunday session because of work commitments or whatever commitments you have.
Right.
So then we can do a Friday also. So
yeah.
prior information we have to send that we are not able.
You'll have to let us know that you want to come for the Friday session. Just a mail or something, you'll have to let us know. But, and after a couple of programs, I mean, I think the Zoom link will remain the same, so then it will become easier.
Okay.
Yeah, Sadhya, I wanted to check, is this going to further on move to mindfulness-based counseling program that you have, the one on counseling and psychotherapy?
Not now, because that is something we are really rethinking. What I realized is when we started that program, I was doing 8 weeks of this and then, like a module of that. But the 8 weeks is not enough for getting mindfulness into counseling. It's not even the start of a journey. So we need something far more longer and intensive. If we have to do mindfulness-based counseling, we need the person to go through their personal journeys. But whenever that module starts, the one ingredient of that module will surely be that you have completed this course. Because you have to work with yourself extensively to be able to bring it to someone else. Otherwise, it kind of can get very empty.
So as in when you launch that program again, will one need to again do the 8 weeks program?
No, I don't think so. But how that program will it be a 1 year long program? Will it be in modules? So we really have to think that through. So I don't know how in the new form it will come.
Sure.
When it will come and how it will come, both, I don't know.
Thank you.
I have a request, Sadhya.
Yeah, Salil. You've become mute. Salil, you've gone mute.
Oh, actually, in orientation, it always helps me to generate that conviction to attend for 8 weeks when you emphasize the importance of practicing it over 8 weeks. So if you could tell a bit about why 8 weeks, it will be helpful.
Okay. See, 8 weeks, neuroscience studies have shown that 8 weeks of practice, 20 minutes a day, can actually change the function and the structure of the brain. It can positively impact. So most courses, if you see the MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness-based stress reductions, most courses are 8-week courses. Also, the immersiveness of the experience is very important. But frankly, I feel 8 weeks is also just scratching that surface. It's not even scratching the surface of the whole thing. It's just a tip of the iceberg. It's just where you build conviction to go forward into your own self and understand yourself better. And that's why a lot of people are even repeating the 8-week course, because it's not, it's so much conditioning that we have to work through. But as we work through, it's not that we have to reach a particular place and only then we get calmer or happier. As we work through, we get happier. But we also start to get the understanding that so much more is there to work through. There's so much more stuff out there. So 8 weeks is so that we can have a very extensive, immersive, broad understanding of all the possibilities. Then, like, what do I do if I have an emotional stuff? What do I do if I have a relational thing going on? How do I look at compassion? What if I find somebody very difficult in my life? So these questions can be addressed in a practice-oriented way over 8 weeks. And then, of course, you have to continue your practice, continue attending courses by other teachers, these courses, whatever. But you have to continue because it's an ongoing, I keep attending stuff even now. It's an ongoing journey. Does that answer your question, Sunny? Okay. So if there are no more questions, we will do a 5-minute practice if you're okay with that. And then we will disperse. Just 5 minutes. We'll just settle
You'll have
down.
to log off. You have to head somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Whoever needs to log off, please feel free. Whoever
Thank
is
you.
Okay,
here.
thank you.
Bye-bye. See you. And whoever would like to just sit for 3 minutes, 5 minutes in silence, and we'll just end it with just arriving back into the present and taking some time to just assimilate whatever our learnings have been for today, which is not introspection, but just a settling down. Noticing how you are feeling right now. Just noticing the rhythm of your breath and actively just letting go. Okay, we come to the end of the practice for today. Have a nice Sunday, all of you.